Who were some of the other shows that began to emerge, and how were they different from yours? And
Well, other talk shows began to surface after Oprah in the 80s. And the street became very crowded with Donahue follow-ons, people who essentially the same thing, audience, set, couple of chairs, people could stand up and ask questions, same thing. And it got racier and racier. Shows, for example, you got two guys and a girl, and they're going to tell you who's the father of the baby she's carrying because they just got the test back from the lab. I mean, we didn't do that. We did blind dates and followed them and took pictures of them and how'd it work out and before and after. I liked them, I didn't like them. But, and that was interesting enough and was amusing, and people enjoyed looking at these young people who were either getting to know each other or finding that they didn't get along and how they broke up and whatever, all of that. Jenny Jones, I'm watching Jenny Jones one day, and she's doing a show on one-night stands. One-night stand. I gotta watch this. So she brings out the girl, 24 years old, lovely, gorgeous. And I don't think she was 20, I think she was 19. Well, Jenny says, tell us about it. Well, I met him, and instantly we were attracted to each other, and one thing led to another, and of course the audience starts to lean forward, and we just went and we got a motel room. Whoa, says the audience. And I had the most exciting, wildest night of sexual bliss I've ever had. Whoa, says the audience. And Jenny looks at the camera and she says, well, do we want to meet him? And the audience says, yeah. And Jenny says, we will when we come back in just a moment. Oh, I'm sitting there. I waited. I mean, she's got me. I want to see this guy. And we come back, and you still want him? Yes. And Jenny says, and here he is. And this guy walks out. He's 6'4" and black. The audience goes, whoa! I mean, you never saw excitement like this. And I looked at that screen and I said to myself, well, you never thought of that one. You had blind dates, probably monoracial blind dates. You didn't think of this. This is it was just one moment when I realized how we had notched it up. The attempt to get an audience to watch a show had become so competitive and had been produced by young people who will do whatever it takes to win that time period that we finally had shows like this that I never would have thought of this. It's, would I have done it if we did? Maybe, I don't know. It's not with criticism that I'm making this point. It's with it was a checkpoint. It was a realization that I used to have Bob Dole, the minority and later majority leader of the United States Senate, on the Donahue show all by himself. There is no way I could have done that in the 90s. We used to have Dick Gephardt, the minority leader of the House of Representatives, for an hour. There is no way I could have done that in the 90s. So that the attempt to draw the crowd became so intense that the selection of material became more and more bizarre with each passing week, and finally reached its culmination with the Springer Show. Jerry Springer has people fighting each other, pulling hair. I mean, the number one program on all of cable is wrestling. And Jerry Springer obviously discovered that before a lot of us. And what essentially he did was put on a program that cut the baloney and just went for what he knew would be different, exciting, and draw a crowd. And it has worked. He doesn't get all the sponsors in the world, that's for sure. But he obviously gets enough to allow his program to remain alive and commercially viable. And he is doing things that we never would have dreamed of. And once again, I am I'm keeping my own counsel on. You know, I just believe that, I don't believe in censorship, and I believe that if we just relax for a moment, that if these shows are that awful that often, they will fall of their own weight. We don't need any government protests or censorship. And I certainly can't sign off on organized efforts to cancel a program, which many conservative Christian groups do. I may want to picket a program someday, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I never objected to being picketed or criticized. I never objected to being, for when people petition sponsors to cancel us, unless they lied about me, which they often did. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm right. I think that these things will work themselves out without the artificial intervention of righteous people who know what's good for you and your neighbors.
After seeing that Jenny Jones episode that had such an impact on you, and seeing all the other shows, the Geraldo, Morton Downey Jr., some of the others that were, did you ever begin to change the topics or format of your own show in any way?
Well, over the years, we've had, scores of people work for us. Producers, young people, came and went. Many of our producers were women, not all. And as I say, they were young and hip. And I looked up to discover that I was the oldest horse in the race. And I felt a responsibility to the stations to do what I could to draw as large a crowd as I could. And I knew I couldn't do this with Senator Bob Dole or Congressman Dick Gephardt. We knew this in the early 70s. It's just that in the 70s and 80s, we were able to do both. We could be silly and then do a show on the Holocaust the next day. We wanted the viewer to be off guard. We didn't want you to be able to predict us or put us in a niche. We wanted to surprise you every day. But as these other programs, which were becoming more and more hysterical and bizarro, grew, yes, I found myself leaning toward superficial stuff. I had a guy come in and rub my feet and tell me where, what part of the brain this relaxes. And I hated this, but we did it. We also continued to do, as I used to call them, save my soul shows that had to do with pharmaceutical companies that put drugs on the market without being thoroughly tested. Stuff like that, important things like this. We did shows, our most drugged community in America is our seniors. Look at your grandmother's medicine chest. If she falls down, it might be because she's drugged, because some doctor or more than one doctor has written all these prescriptions. Those kinds of shows that are so wonderfully redeeming, you really feel you've done something, became less and less a feature of our weekly fare, and I have to acknowledge that that's true.
Were the ratings affected?
Yes. I mean, our ratings were affected as we moved into the 90s. More competition, more screaming on the other channels. My daughter's a slut, and out comes this 12-year-old nymphette with, a halter top and a tight, and her mother saying, I can't control her, I don't know what to do. Some of this I thought, broached pedophilia in some ways. We didn't do that, but we felt the pressure, yes. Bob Dole, talking about matters before the United States Senate, is going to lose to the two women and the man who is intimately seeing both of them. When she gets up to punch him in the mouth for sleeping with this slut, I don't have a chance with Bob Dole, Dick Gephardt, the Syrian-Israeli border dispute, Lebanon, the atomic bomb, Iraq, or anything else. I'm going to lose. As long as the size of the audience is the coin of the realm, we are going to have programs that will do everything they can to creatively present what is essentially a naked lady, a stripper, or a fight between two lovers, or something like that. Trumps important issues all the time. Ask the tabloids.
Ultimately, what led to your decision to end the Donahue show?
Well, 29 years, and after 29 years and a wonderful ride, and turning 60, I said to myself, well, they've heard you speak. You know, maybe you ought to sit down already. We could have done another 2 or 3, maybe staggered along. You know, we weren't really that bad. I mean, we could sell the Donahue show, but we were never. So, of course, we knew we were never going to go back to the numbers that we once enjoyed. And also, you know, I just in my 60s, I didn't want to be running around a studio audience encouraging people to get up and say what they really think. As much of a ride as it was nice to get out of the car. Yeah, really. And now I bore people with long stories about where I've been and what I've done. My grandchildren aren't quite old enough yet, but poor kids, they're going to be subjected to these stories, I'm afraid. It was wonderful. I love to talk about it.
On just a side thought, how did it make you feel? Was it a good thing or a bad thing when you would see yourself being parodied by Saturday Night Live and all the people that would do the Phil Donahue impressions?
Being parodied on Saturday Night Live was, first of all, very flattering. The first time you just stare, you know, my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You know, see a guy mimicking you. Saturday Night Live did a sketch shortly after I was married in which Marlo and I are in bed, and my first wife comes in, Margie. Now imagine, I'm watching this, and it's pretty funny, I have to tell you. It's pretty funny. I mean, I'm staring at this thing. And the wrap-up is they're talking to each other, and then they conclude, the two of them, that they both agree that Phil isn't really that much in bed. Saturday Night Live. And I have to tell you, it was funny. I'd rather tell you it wasn't, but it was funny.
How'd Marlo feel about it?
She thought it was funny. She thought, I'm the butt of the joke, not her, so she thought it was funny. It's very flattering to me. Phil Hartman, who was the first to imitate me, told me that it made his career. Well, certainly on Saturday Night Live, that was the first imitation he did that caught on. And he introduced me to his parents. I was very flattered that, somehow, indirectly in some way, I promoted a guy's good fortune. Phil Hartman. Gone too soon.
You had another show, according to these notes, simultaneously, 1991 through 1994 on CNBC.
The program I did the space bridge with, the person I did the space bridge with was Vladimir Posner, who was born in Paris but raised until he was 15 in Manhattan. He went to Stuyvesant High School. And his father was a very devoted communist who saw the Red Scare coming, and he and his family fled to East Germany in 1948. And then in 1953 they arrive in Moscow, where the establishment there, the USSR, got an apartment for Mr. Posner, Vladimir's father. So Vladimir spends 48 years in the Soviet Union. 48 years locked up, essentially. He couldn't leave. He's a journalist. He's a television guy. He's a member of the Communist Party. He appears on Nightline for the first time in 1980. He's a Russian who doesn't sound like a Russian. You know, he was raised in Manhattan. He was the only one in the Soviet Union who knew who Babe Ruth was. He grew up with the Yankees and Mel Allen. And he couldn't get out of the Soviet Union. Here I am on a space bridge with him. Finally, they let him go. He comes on the Donahue show. We got to meet each other for the first time after doing 2 space bridges. One was Seattle, Leningrad. The other was Boston, Leningrad, women to women. What do you have in your purse? Ready to the oh, they're all gone. You know, both sides of the world, they're pulling out things. Vladimir and I wound up with our own show, cable show, on CNBC. The chairman of the board of CNBC, of the owning umbrella company, General Electric, Jack Welch, is getting letters from Army buddies, saying, Jack, you got a commie on your station. I mean, now, once again, first it was Madeline Murray O'Hare, now I'm hobnobbing with a commie. So we had, this, of course, made it all more exciting for me. And the two of us would do, half-hour show. We'd pop off and have guests. Everybody's fascinated by this guy. Women loved him. Vladimir, I'll tell you, Vladimir walks in my office, everybody stops typing. I mean, really, they think he's neato.
When was this?
Huh?
When was this? What was the run of the show, or when did it start?
I'd say I'm going to guess, what is it, 92 to 96, 91
So
to
mid-90s, early to mid-90s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was a wonderful experience. We had great fun. I have a lifetime friend. He now has dual citizenship. People, when he and I were doing the space bridge, and he finally came over, the FBI had to approve everything he did. He wasn't allowed to go someplace north of Boston. The FBI would come to the hotel, and I mean, this is, yesterday. And there are people out there right now who go to the grave believing that he's a spy. I used to, say, yeah, I check him every day for the microphone. I go like this. And incidentally, cannot find work alone here. They will not hire Vladimir Posner because of his ideology, because of his history. And there are literally some of the older journalists who think he shouldn't even be on television. Amazing.
You keep in touch?
Oh yeah. In fact, he called me this morning. We will see each other this summer. He comes with his wife Katya. He has a daughter in Berlin. He is one of the most informed. This guy, graduate of Moscow U. He knows more about the old Warsaw Pact nations than anybody alive. He's just very bright. He translated. Incidentally, he speaks. He's born in Paris. He's 5 years old. He moves to the States. He's 14 years old. He moves to East Germany. He's got French, English, and German. Moves in 53 to Russia, and he's got Russian, like that. He speaks all these languages without an accent. A native would not know that he wasn't a native. I feel like, I talk about Mr. Remedial reading here. I'm an American, which is another way of saying I only speak English. And it just reminded me of the difference in the cultures, and also meeting the people over there. seeing what they are interested in. It was exciting to be in a. Incidentally, those shows didn't do so well either in the ratings. Nah. The Cold War was pretty much over. Well, it wasn't over in '85, I guess, but Gorbachev had come to power, and
Which shows didn't do well in the ratings?
the
space
the space
connections
bridges
or the
did fair.
CNBC?
It did well. The space bridge was viewed by over 150 million Russians. We aired in prime time in 11 time zones. 11 time zones. We have 4 continental United States. Imagine. And we're the only channel. We had 100 share. The only channel. And they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Remember, the deal was anything goes. You can't edit this. And of course, there was a big crisis after we did it. What about Sakharov, I wanted to know. I was determined, because everybody figured, oh, here's liberal Donahue. He's being duped by the Ruskies, by the commies. I got warnings from everybody. They'll rig the interpreters. So we got our own interpreters. We went out and chose the audience. We chose the audience. We had no trouble getting into factories in Moscow. We couldn't get into Boeing in Seattle, suburban Seattle. They don't hold it. And I was afraid that people would think I was, duped, sucked along on this propaganda thing. So I just let go. 17 minutes into the show, I said, you have Andrei Sakharov, essentially a prisoner in Gorky. Why is he there? We talked about old men behind wooden doors make decisions in secret for you. That doesn't bother you. You can't speak out. I mean, 150 million Russians couldn't believe what they were seeing on TV. They had never seen anything like this. Nothing like this was ever allowed. It was Gorbachev who said, go, put it on the air. So 150 million Russians, and we worked very hard and sold 80 cities. 80. The Donahue show aired on over 220. Only 80 bought the space bridge. 2 space bridges. We care less about them than they care about us. They have an enormous curiosity about us. And it is not reciprocated. It isn't that we ignore them or want them to die. I'm not saying that. We just, Russia, Musha, I got other things to do.
How did This Week with Posner and Donahue? Was that the name of the show?
It was called Posner and Donahue.
How did it do in the ratings? And how long?
Fair. Sometimes very well. But I can't say we burned the town down.
And how difficult was it for you? And I mean, what's it like to be doing 2 shows at the same time?
Well, we didn't strip it. It wasn't 5 nights a week. I was doing my show, and I was doing CNBC. I was doing 5 Donahue daytimes, but I was only doing, I think, 3. It varied along the way. Vladimir and I did this for about 4 years, I think. And I was retiring from the daytime show, and I didn't want to have to make the trip all the way across the bridge. I figured, hey, I'm going to retire for keeps. And Vladimir seemed to be okay with this. So we voluntarily ended our relationship with CNBC. We were not fired.
Just very briefly to explain, you said we didn't strip. What's the concept of a strip show?
Well, a strip show is 5 days a week. Soap operas are strip shows. Evening news is a strip show. Oprah, Sally. And, if I had committed to 5 nights a week, I'm not sure what. It's also hard to draw a crowd if you're only on 2 or 3 times a week. People are creatures of habit, and if they find you, it's probably an accident. You're much better off, if you want to succeed, to have the ambition, the energy, and the will to do 5 shows a week, which I certainly didn't have at that time. A lot of fun, though, working with Vladimir. I mean, he taught me a lot. He and I have, we've shared a lot. It was a bonus, really, that this opportunity came into my life in my 50s. I mean, wow, we're coming out. I mean, I was in Minsk in a public square on a rainy day with and I don't know why, we were filming something, we're in the park, and a woman with a babushka came up to me, and she said, and I looked at Vladimir, and he said, she saw you on television, she wants your autograph. And I thought, hey, I'm an international, I'm Elvis. Next, 6 months later, I'm in Japan, and we're at a Buddha statue, and before that, the woman had showed me an article in the Tokyo newspaper, vertical characters, and she said, did you do a show on children and cancer? I said, yes, I did for NBC. She said, well, there's an article about it. I go, I'm in Tokyo. I'm hot. I'm a hit in Asia. We go to the Buddha statue, and there are 2 Japanese ladies with the kimono and the obis, and they're looking at me, and they got their camera, and I'm thinking, they never let you alone here, and I'm about to comb my hair, when they point, and I said, sure, they gave me the camera. They wanted me to take their picture. They had no idea who I was. So, I have a flight of fantasy once in a while that's very short-lived. Sooner or later, I'm brought back to Earth. But this thing with Posner was big for me.
And
very big.
you say that you guys made the decision to end that show.
Yes.
Do you feel it was the same with the Donahue show? And let's talk about the end of the Donahue show and leading up to your last show, the taping of your last show.
Well, I felt that 29 years, I'm 60 years old, we aren't doing the numbers we used to. It's getting tougher and tougher. They don't want to see politicians. They want to see naked ladies. You're being challenged on every front in terms of the visual, the fighting, the Springer, the guards. The audiences are being prepared on these other shows. We never told an audience member what to say. There are people being told to cry, being told when to cry, when to scream. It's all manufactured. We were very proud of the fact that we got 200 people in the audience, and what do you know, maybe somebody will say something interesting. I apologize to you.